Hey guys, Jacalyn here with Zenith Home Loans. Thank you so much for joining us for another of our Q&A sessions with different business leaders in the area. Today we have my good friend Jade Baranski, and they are going to talk about a nonprofit organization that they've created called the Queer Business Alliance. So thank you, Jade, for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're super busy with all the things that you do.
Yes, never too busy for you though. Never,
I appreciate it. So why don't we? Here. I love it. So why don't we just jump in? What is the Queer Business Alliance?
So the Queer Business Alliance is one of those organizations, now a nonprofit, but at the beginning it was just an idea, right? That was really born out of a gap that I saw in services for LGBTQ folks around business. There's, everybody knows the chamber. There's always good old LGBTQ chambers of commerce. They serve a fantastic purpose. They definitely cater to and have a lot more resources for folks who are like already in business, right? So if you were just starting or thinking about starting or what it might be like to start, it might be a little bit hard to get your entry point there. And I was lucky enough when I was a super young little baby gay to have an older business owner literally like come up to me in a restaurant and say, "Do you want a different job?" And I was like, yes. She could have run a funeral home. She could have, I don't know, dug holes, done construction. I had no clue. I was just like, you look like who I want to be in 20 years. You're like eating out at a restaurant 3 times a week, and this is good food, and I want to be like you.
Right.
And, she had short hair like me. So I identified. So that gap around that mentorship piece, like you're not in business, you don't think it's accessible, is really where Queer Business Alliance wanted to fill that void and build programming around how do I see that it's even possible for me, right? If you don't have someone in your family that owns a business, if you don't see it on TV, if it's not represented in your day-to-day life, how do you even, there's a reason less than 1% of all businesses are LGBTQ owned.
Yeah.
And it's not good statistics. That's not the reason.
Yeah. That's not a statistic. And so when you were kind of getting your business, because you've had a couple of businesses now that you've started from the ground up and been incredibly successful in your own right. So is that really the biggest reason behind why you wanted to start it, is just, hey, I got lucky and I had this person and I realized there's not actually these other people and these other resources out there. I guess it never occurred to me that that demographic of business owners or hopeful business owners would really need something more specific, more geared towards how they operate in the business space.
Yeah. I mean, that's mostly the case. And when the Queer Business Alliance was started, mentorship was the number one programming idea, was like build a mentorship program that's accessible via the computer. Because, if you grow up in rural Kentucky, you're not like driving down to Denver to meet somebody for coffee. Right. So really having that be as accessible, digitally driven, with the whole idea that anybody in the country can log on, connect with a mentor, and really get a lot of its mindset, right? And business, like you can know all the things, you can understand the process, but if you don't believe that you're capable, that it's possible, like all of that knowing means absolutely nothing. Right. So that mindset, that original mentorship piece was a big focus area. And it's definitely what I got, like lucky, right time, right place. And I just saw people all around me, a lot of people who had worked for me, who were like, I can't start a business. I'm like, look, hello. Like here, like if I can, you can. It's not rocket science. So like it was a mixture of like my experience plus what I was seeing happening around me in the community of like a lot of people talking about how it was just so hard and like how could you figure it out when I think most of us know that actually starting a business is not the hard part. Like that's the easy part. The paperwork's easy. Keeping
going and figuring out, okay, I'm not the only person having this experience, and you just have to keep going. I think that's and having somebody kind of pull you out of that negative headspace that we all fall into when we're in the thick of it and something's not working, or we're doing all the work and we're not seeing it materialize into dollars or business or contacts or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
And so what kind of businesses do you have in the program now that focus on or that function on the mentorship side?
Yeah, we have everything from services businesses, which is really common. It's a great first business, right? Like kind of an entry point. all the way to probably the most like boots on the ground business that I can think of is they're providing different cleaning services.
Okay.
So it's still services, but it's got more of a product vibe.
Okay.
So it's, you know, it spans the gap between the two. And obviously I own tech companies. Mm-hmm. So anytime that I'm participating in a mentorship, you know, communication relationship, I'm gaining something from it.
Right.
So even when it's like a brand new person who's never owned a business, they say something and I'm like, that's important to my market. Yeah. And I never thought about, like, I just never, you know, I don't have your exact experience. So yeah, we call them queer peers. Okay. Because it's always peer-to-peer mentorship. Uh-huh. So it's not like, oh, I've had 3 successful businesses bought and sold, and so I know everything and I'm going to teach you the way. Right. I hope that I can help you close gaps and build whatever mindset you need to build. And I know for a fact that there's value in this relationship both ways.
Okay. Awesome. And then beyond what Queer Business Alliance does and beyond like the chamber, is there anything else in that sector that you know of that's helping the LGBTQ community really kind of get their feet wet and get in the door and start these businesses?
Yeah, there's more nonprofits in Colorado than any other state in the country. Right. So I don't want to say there aren't. I will say there aren't many that are super loud, right? Like you won't easily find them. Yeah. There's one organization called Start Out that's phenomenal. I mean, they're funded by like the Googles of the world, but they focus pretty exclusively on tech. So LGBTQ folks in tech and starting tech companies. So like for me, they'd be a great resource. But if you wanted to like start that cleaning company, or you were looking at doing coaching, right? They don't have any services or programs for you. Yeah. So there's a good amount out there if you're looking to get into tech through organizations like Start Out. It's part of the reason we started QBA, was like that like boots on the ground. I want to start a business that doesn't fit this like one kind of sexy mold, right? Which is technology. Yeah. There isn't a whole lot. Okay. And it's not like you couldn't find other things, but we've looked. I mean, we've done market analysis, SWOT, like all that good stuff. Mm-hmm.
And so your group is not exclusive to Colorado. It sounds like you serve anybody who needs help that finds you. It doesn't matter what state they're in. And then is the same true for the companies that are in there as the mentors? Are they all over the United States, or are they just localized in Colorado? Okay.
Same. Yeah. East Coast, West Coast. We have a good showing here because, you know, when we first started, we did a lot of events. We did, you know, we had a lot of the in-person pre-pandemic stuff happening. Right. I think our first summer as an organization, we did like 12 events.
Oh, awesome. And do you have a lot of people, a lot of people come to those kinds of events?
Yeah. They were really popular. I mean, awesome. The gap is like that gap for I'm a person who identifies, or even we had tons of allies come too, of like, I'm interested in what you guys are up to, because when you're pre-starting a business, being around other people who are in that same, like, ooh, I'm interested in starting a business, it creates something, right? There's like those of us who like, well, you and I originally met in a coaching group. Right. Like there's a benefit you get from being around people who are up to similar things, and your ability to continue raising, you know, what I call your ecology, but your ability to just kind of like level up. You have to get around people who are leveling up, right? Or else you're just level. Yeah.
You can't be the smartest person in the room, because you're not going to gain anything. They're going to gain stuff, but you're not going to gain anything. You can't level up your business. Yeah, exactly right.
I spent 10 years being the smartest person in the room. It sucks. I don't recommend it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because you're like, well, should I be doing more? And then you hear of other people and you're like, well, hey, I want what they have. How do I get there? Yeah, you got to change the demographic of people that are in the room. So what kind of mistakes did you make, or have you seen others make, that you would want people to help people avoid as they're getting into, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I want to start this business, whether it's tech or a flower shop or whatever the case may be. Like, what kind of things did you have to learn the hard way that you hope someone doesn't necessarily have to by being in your mentorship program?
Yeah. The first thing I always talk about, and like the reason that like I sold my first business and was like mad at it, like I didn't love it anymore, was that I didn't stay true to my why. Yeah. Like my why, like why did I start this business? Why do I care? What does it matter to me? And it can't be about money. Okay, let's be clear. It can be about money. Right. There has to be an additional reason. Why do you want money? Why do you care about owning your own business? What is it about this business being in the world that lights you up? Like that will get you out of bed and not have you be a hustler or grinding, like two of my least favorite words in business.
Mine too. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's like nobody wants to hustle. And if you do hustle, it's not sustainable. You can only do it for a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. When you're brand new, hustle for a year. Okay, fine.
Right.
And then you've got to get into something scalable that you can sustain. And if you don't have a clear why, right? Like my why is that like my contribution in the world is that other people see themselves as a contribution. And however I can participate in that. So like a mentorship program, right? Starting this nonprofit. We have tons of growth and development built into all of my businesses that every employee goes through. That's really important to me. Like you being lit up in your why that's my why. Because I spent a long time not being clear on my own why and just kind of walking through the world like, I'm just being successful because this is what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah. But also
and that wasn't, it's not super fulfilling, right?
Yeah.
So that is definitely the number one, like before you even consider starting a business, why do you want to start a business? And like getting really clear with yourself at your core level, like you have to believe it. It can't be some BS made up, like I'm just saying it because somebody told me I need a mission statement. Like those don't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even calling them a mission statement at this point is a little archaic. It's there's so much more to it. A mission statement feels like 1950s, I manufacture cars for a living kind of thing. And I just feel like things are so much different now in starting businesses and building relationships with people and things like that. You just have to connect on such a different level anymore for it to feel meaningful.
Yep.
So why is an organization like QBA so important for people to know about? Not just the clientele it's going to serve. So not just LGBTQ people. Why is it important for the greater whole of every individual to know that this organization exists, do you think?
Yeah. So for me, allies and people outside of the LGBT community were huge in the success of my businesses, right? Like most of my clients were not LGBTQ when I had a service business. In fact, very few were. Yeah. And I believe this conversation around closing the wealth gap. So there's a lot of statistics around, there's a demographic of G people, gay men specifically, who are doing really well. Like they sit pretty high up in the, power, money conversation. And then there's a lot of the other Q plus folks who there's this like resentment towards money, like capitalism is bad. And like, this is just not, we don't want to participate in this. And it's really disempowering. For me as a queer person and non-binary business owner, but also I think for the people all around us, right? Like my mom is not gay. I'm like surrounded by allies. Like you're not gay. Most of the people that I interact with are not, they don't identify as LGBTQ. Right. So knowing that there's business organizations like ours to not only participate in, know about, point people towards, but to support, right? Like there's a sense of, there's a financial side of this organization in any nonprofit organization that, right, the more money we pump into it, the more resources and services we can put out on the other side. And ultimately we want to be self-sustainable, but I'm realistic. That's like 5 years down the road. Right. So we're still 3 years out from being totally self-sustainable. So if it's important to people that queer business owners get more, not just airtime, right? Like we get seen more, but more young queer kids have access to that. And we change this whole conversation for who has all the money, who has all the power. Right. And I think that's important to a lot of people. You see now, like out protesting and like, you can be mad and protest. I'm like, I've been to many, many protests, but like, what are you doing? What actions are you actually taking? And what organizations are you supporting to change that narrative? Yeah. Yeah. I think that's huge. And I think anybody seeing other people be successful in general, whether it's in an organization that they're functioning in, or just as people outside of their little family unit or their friend unit and younger kids, especially, it's like knowing what you're able to accomplish, because that's how I think we get a lot more accepting individuals on higher levels. And I think that as a whole would make things a heck of a lot better with everything else that's going on a global level for sure. Yeah. Let's see, you've kind of touched on a couple of things. So and you guys are kind of on a nationwide scale to an extent, but are there any other organizations outside of yours on a nationwide scale
that are trying to do what you're doing that you found, or do you have hopes of growing this much bigger with all your free time, 2 kiddos and everything else?
Our current fundraising goal is to hire a new executive director, a paid staff person to run the organization. So yes, and right, there are some, like the chamber has a national showing, start out a little bit, right? They're digital, so they're pretty national. But I really do think our niche in and around the sort of the Q plus in the LGBT it's super important. There's, if you go look at the Chamber of Commerce national board and staff page, you will not see a whole lot of diversity in any of those things, whether it be, their culture or how they identify or their pronouns. Like, there's just not a whole lot of diversity. So having this, I'm going to call it the younger voice for sake of just communicating. It has nothing to do with age. It's just a different cultural conversation that's happening now, where like the kids in high school now are like non-binary, no problem. When I was in high school, there was no, I didn't even know what non-binary meant.
Right.
So like getting those kids, right, they're still kids, they're like in high school, into these types of organizations and having their voices being heard at a higher level is super important. It's right, like policy is in our 5-year plan to get engaged in national policy. And without doing that, there's no long-term change, right? Like that's the capitalistic side of this, right? Like everything is actually run by policy. So we do want to get there. Right. And I think the stage there's a lot of space on the stage. Like there are seats for us.
Yeah. And so is QBA, are you guys, so how are you operating? So you said that you want to hire an executive board, correct?
Executive director,
excuse me. And that's paid. So how are you guys, so are the mentors, are they paid in any way? Or is it just kind of you're running it? And I assume there's some people working underneath of you, helping you to kind of manage some stuff. And are those people, is that how kind of the organization is structured for you guys right now?
Yeah. A pretty common, like early stage nonprofit, right? We have a volunteer board.
Okay.
Obviously I founded it and I'm never going anywhere. I'm like 100% committed to this thing happening. So I'm a permanent board member, if you will.
Okay. Right.
But we've had 9 board members sort of cycle in and out of being on the board. We're looking for new board members. So if anybody is super jazzed about that. And then, our 12 to 18 month goal is to hire the executive director and then bring in a few other paid, very specific, right? Like a PR person, bringing someone in to lead the social side of the house. So like small team, small and mighty, but all queer peers it's 2-way. So it's all volunteer. It's all of your own time. But we did build all the programming. So you follow like a very clear structure. You get support from us. So there's additional pieces of that provide benefit for the members.
Okay. And then as far as the staff is concerned and your the board members, obviously we know mentors, we want that to be part of the LGBTQ community. Do you also want your board and your staff to be a part of the LGBTQ community as well? Or do allies work if somebody wants to get involved? Or what are your thoughts around that? Have you guys kind of dove into that process?
Yeah. We've had a lot of conversations about that actually, and very, very open to allies. Okay. I mean, obviously there would have to be a pretty strong mission alignment on the side of like, why do you, of all the things you could be involved in. Yeah. Why do you want to be involved? And assuming that that's aligned, there's really no, because the plus in LGBTQ is like, it's literally anybody who identifies within the space, which in my experience, I have many, many straight friends who are like, like there's parts of that culture that I really do identify with and that I enjoy. I just am, in this part of my life, it doesn't fit. So, that's why we called it the Queer Business Alliance and not the non-binary business alliance or the, just the gay business alliance.
Right. That makes sense. So as far as if somebody wanted to support the QBA, so obviously monetary donations, is that strictly how you guys are funding everything right now? Or do you have sponsors that support on a regular basis, or kind of how does that work for you so far?
Yeah. We've had good success with one-time donations. Those are great because we're a C3. So if you need your tax write-off, let's go. No problem.
Right.
We got you. And then we have a lot of alternative options. We have a whole menu of ways to engage with QBA. One of my favorites is sponsoring the podcast.
Okay.
Because it gets you to highlight someone who's being highlighted. So it's kind of that amplification of the voices. The podcast, I will say, even in the context of like, not just as a podcast, but all the social we do around it, right? All the linking, all the backlinks. It's a really great way to align with the brand. So that's one of my favorites. Of course, we have corporate sponsorships that I think we're on like our 10th conversation. We haven't had like the lucky one yet. And, you know, hopefully with Pride Month being done now, like everybody was very focused on sponsoring Pride, which is great. Like we love that. And Pride is only 1 month a year.
Right.
And all these people are still here. So
right.
Don't just make your logo a rainbow for 1 month a year because it's weird.
Yeah.
So like really re-engaging with those corporate sponsors post Pride is our next move. Okay. So very open. Like if anybody knows any corporate folks that are in sponsorship, we like to have conversations, right? Because not everybody's a good fit. We're not like trying to sell them on sponsoring us. It has to be like a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. So you're really looking for that alignment with, okay, well, why are you giving and is it in alignment with kind of what our mission is as far as furthering the development of queer business owners and hopeful entrepreneurs and things like that?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. And then do you have, now that COVID's kind of more, it's not over obviously, but like more manageable and things are a little bit more loosey-goosey as far as how we organize and get together and stuff. Are you planning on doing more in-person events?
Yeah. So our new strategy, instead of hosting events, because I will say in the world of resources, that is,
oh yeah, that's very expensive.
And it just, it takes away from our core programming, which is more of the resources and the mentorship. So we've actually moved towards a partnership strategy. So QBA just sponsored the Queer Beer Fest, which happened about 2 weeks ago now, I think, almost 2 weeks ago. Hundreds and hundreds, there had to have been thousands of people there, all of whom like got to see QBA, got to talk with us, get resources. And really that's going to be our strategy, at least short term, right? And so if we staff up and we can host our own events, maybe, but I think we're pretty aligned that like it takes away from the core programming around like getting the resources to the right people.
Yeah. Events are certainly challenging.
We're a great partner. We bring like solid swag. We have great conversations. I think we add a lot to existing events. Yeah. And there's not a great reason, I think we'll probably host something for Denver Startup Week, those kinds of things, but more low key, like panels or socials.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. What is your favorite thing about QBA, or any favorite people or businesses that you've helped so far?
I think my favorite thing is the conversation for the queer peer mentorships and how when we did the beta program, we had this one pairing that sticks out I won't talk about them specifically, but this one pairing who, when we did like the check-ins and the follow-up after the program to like do the tweaks, right? And it was the first time we were learning. They both said independently, right? Like directly to me, it wasn't in a conversation with everybody, that it was a total game changer for them.
Oh, awesome.
To be in a conversation with another person who was leveling up in similar ways, kind of that same conversation we had earlier.
Right.
And that they were like clamoring for the next program. They were like, when are you starting the next version of this? Because it doesn't exist. Like to my earlier point, the gap in this market is real. You will not find this type of program anywhere else. So, and that was really always the key, right? We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We really don't want to be the organization that's like, hey, we do this slightly different than everyone else. So we don't want to take resources away from anybody. So really honing in on that mentorship piece, and then those resources when you're first starting. We've seen, like I have heard from people's mouths, it's not just like my own, this is qualitative research, that it's made a significant difference for them in their business. And that's like, that's why you do it, right? It's not about point. It's not about me. It's not about what it could be. It's about what it actually does.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And so if somebody needs the help of the QBA, what's the best way for them to reach out to you to get support?
Yeah. The website is super updated and we're very active. So if you go to queerbusinessalliance.org,
Okay.
And you fill out any of the forms. There's a couple different ways to engage. Our email's also on there. We check that daily. So we get everything from like, hey, who do you recommend to do finances? A lot. That's a very common question.
Yeah.
All the way to, how do I get involved pre-membership, right? Because we do have a membership it's affordable. It's under $100 to become a member for the year, and you get all the services and resources of the peer mentorship program. But we have some businesses who are like, hey, we're not quite ready. So how can we engage pre? And we have lots of ways for them to do that. So we definitely meet people where they're at.
Awesome. So just heading out to the website, filling out the form, and then somebody will reach out. Okay.
Yep. Yes.
Very cool.
A real
and
person.
You answered my next question, which was, is there a cost for me to, not me, but if somebody wanting to use the resources? So that is a super affordable membership, and you get so much out of it. So it's not like you're charging some crazy rate to be involved and they're not getting the support that they need, because it sounds like you guys have already helped a ton of people so far.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. That's all my questions. Is there anything else about QBA that you want people to know about, or any just like final thoughts that we didn't touch on that you want to make sure we address?
I think the only other thing is this, part of the conversation of QBA and what we're up to is, we call it bending the business binary.
Okay.
But it's this whole conversation around like, we can be in business, we can make a ton of money, and we can do good. And it doesn't always have to be in this like triple bottom line social entrepreneurship kind of like very structured way.
Right.
It can be, we hire really diverse thinkers, or we built a program for mentorship specific for the high school kids in our community. Like there's a myriad of never ending ways to do that. And the conversation has to be like present, right? There has to be people in business saying, what are we doing to make a difference in the world? Not just make money and, build our pipelines. And like, we know all about the business side.
Right.
And all about the mission driven side, like both, right? Like,
yeah.
But you have to have more people talking about it. And that's we call it a binary, because it's like, there's the business people and then there's the do-gooders. And we're like, nah, you gotta mix those two. Those two go really well together.
Yeah.
Resources and giving back. It works really, really nicely. And doing that in a way that's not, we're not trying to be saviors, right? We're trying to build people up, give them the resources they need to do it themselves. So that's a big conversation that we have a lot. So I just wanted to throw it in because I think it's relevant and interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd love to talk to anybody who has other questions, or, I love a chat like this to see what alignment we have and just how we can help each other out.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll make sure that all of your contact information, that the website's available and things like that. And then, if anybody has questions for Jade, or wants to get involved as far as supporting the QBA or getting involved as either a mentor or you need help, then absolutely reach out. I've worked with Jade on all fronts as a friend, as a client, and with her business, or with their business, is with Joy Lab, with your first organization that you had started. And I can say nothing but wonderful things. So I know you're out there to do lots of good, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
Same. Thanks for making it happen.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're the best. Yes.